I'm just getting the motivation to do to do the intro. This is always where it gets me. All right, ready? Welcome to the Apex Strengthcast with your hosts, Tyler Seabrook and Anthony Krasner. Today we have Head of Powerlifting Australia, Robert Wilks, on to talk about the recent court decision to set the IPF back to 2007, as well as World Powerlifting, what his goals are with that and how he's going to move that forward.
Also known as Rob, Daddy, Powerlifting Australia. And yes, he is the guy who formulated the Wilks coefficient. So Wilks.
Thank you for that sparkling introduction.
Just touch on your powerlifting career and what you achieved.
Such as it was, my career was way back in the late 70s to early 80s. I was a mediocre discus thrower, and I decided to become a mediocre powerlifter, given the time involved in athletics and my studies at the time. I lifted 1 World Championships way back in 83. I was going to go to the 84 World Championships, was injured, so the gentleman who was coach had a little problem and had to withdraw. So I became the coach and have really been involved primarily in coaching ever since. So I was back there in those days and went through the watershed of the Senate inquiry into drugs and sports in 1989, 1990, the formation of ASADA. And that's when we made a turning point decision to go down the path of tested powerlifting, drug-free powerlifting as much as you can get. And that's when in those days, only 2 factions. It was Capo who decided to stay untested, and Powerlifting Australia was born and went on from there.
Why tested over untested?
Well, it's the right thing, it's the healthy thing, it's the commercially sensible thing. That's what the majority of the market is. That's what people want, and that's what's right.
So there was already a lot of common knowledge that what performance-enhancing drugs could do to your health?
In those days, in the 80s, people would say, oh, where's the bodies? Well, they don't say it anymore.
Well, yeah, there's a lot more
bodies,
there's a lot more evidence. Yeah.
There's evidence like the East German athletes who've documented death rates, cancer rates, infertility rates, etc., etc. So nobody says where's the bodies anymore, where's the evidence? But in those days, it was maybe a bit more debatable.
So you've been involved in powerlifting for around 40 years?
About 40 years.
Biggest differences you've seen between now and then?
Well, 40 years, I mean, people get less time for murder, but I've been involved for 40 years. The difference is, of course, the drug issue and what's right has prevailed. The majority of the market, the vast majority of the interest is in drug-free lifting. The other big issue, of course, was equipment. And back in those days, 80s into the early 90s, it was just powerlifting, and equipment was just a fairly tight suit and knee wraps. And unfortunately, it got crazier and crazier and crazier with more and more restrictive gear, which sort of alienated the majority of the fitness market, the vast majority of the fitness market. It was a dead end. So the introduction of raw lifting a few years ago was the other big turning point. The other thing that's happened is powerlifting has become global. In those days, it was really just the Western world, but Russia came in, but for better or worse, and all the other Iron Curtain countries followed fairly quickly in the early to mid-90s. So they're probably the 3 big moves we've seen.
Would you say it's a lot more, it's a lot more, I guess, of a organised sport now? Like when we watch videos of back in the day, we all love watching them, but it all looks very, dungeony, backyard kind of thing where you just kind of rock up, did what you did. There was no big platform, or was it like that for a while? Because I know that there were a few competitions that were televised and everything, but then it kind of died off. So would you say it's a lot more official now, I guess?
Back then, it was a dungeon sport. It's still not entirely out of the dungeon, but now we're much more integrated with the fitness industry and have much more broad appeal. The standard that people expect at contests now is so much higher, which is a good thing. So it's moving out of being a cult. There's still a way to go, though. And
there's more evidence to suggest that powerlifting's good for people's health and it's, I guess, useful.
Yeah. Yes. Now, in the 80s was, Jane Fonda and aerobics and that sort of stuff predominated. Now people understand that being lean, athletic, reasonably muscular is healthy. There's lots of evidence on the preventive value of heavy weight training for osteoporosis, diabetes, and so on and so forth. So the pendulum's really swung.
Yeah, a lot of benefits, even for elderly.
Now,
especially osteoporosis in the elderly.
Yeah, a lot of
and what comes from that is from maintaining strength and legality, their functionality is improved.
Better quality of life, right?
They have less falls and so on and so forth.
And the big one of like mental health as well. It's huge for a lot of people.
Well, when you look at the powerlifting population, you wonder about the mental health issue. But yes, being engaged in a challenging, engrossing activity where you can get a sense of achievement is at the end of the day healthy.
And when you like set and reach intermittent goals, right? Like, you can track. I think the good thing in regards to mental health with powerlifting as well is if someone's having a rough time, say if you just got into like bodybuilding or something, it's very subjective. But in powerlifting, you can clearly track progress, which helps them.
Again, it's empirical. You can track your achievements.
Yeah.
So.
Before we segue into what everyone's listening for and what everyone wants to know, I think a lot of people don't realise that you say you're an average lifter, but you're actually quite good. Your lifts were quite heavy. So what, you competed at 110 kilos?
Yep.
And your best squat was 302.5 kilos?
2.5 with a light equipment.
Yeah.
In those
Deadlift was 302.5.
Correct.
And bench was 177.
Correct.
No shirt.
Yeah, T-shirt.
So they're quite good lifts. What's that, a 770 something total?
775, I think was the best total.
That's a good total at 110.
Yeah.
Did that win competitions for you back then?
Back in those days, it was a tough road to hoe.
Is that because of the
drugs?
drugs?
One nationals, I came third in 750. That's a pretty neat total. And the catch was second was 920, first was 930.
Jesus.
That's what it was like in the nationals in those days.
That's kind of like what the 120s are now. What did you walk around at weight-wise?
116, 117.
And how did you cut that?
I would live in the sauna for 48 hours.
And it was a 2-hour weigh-in?
2-hour weigh-in.
How did you go about getting... So this could be a tip for people that are less experienced. How did you go about performing after cutting 8 kilos of water?
Well,
Or you didn't?
I wouldn't recommend doing that because the standard now is a 4% weight cut is all you should really do. But I would just rehydrate steadily a litre an hour, so you scull a litre straight off the scales and keep drinking right through the deadlift.
Do you think there was... If you didn't cut as much weight, you would have got more in your squat? Your squat would have been a bit bigger, or you don't think it had that much of an effect?
When I was cutting 117, one time I got down from 119 and I just didn't lift well. So
and now seeing the studies as well.
The new maximum 4% is about right.
Yeah. Well, I cut 3 kilos at 123, 3.5, and I felt terrible. I can't imagine doing 8 or 9.
Yeah, but you're a big wuss. So.
And was this like a trial and error thing as well? Because there wasn't like studies or people who had that experienced with it then?
All trial and error.
All trial and error, yeah. Do you have any bad comps because of it?
Yes, I remember in nationals when I got down from 119, I just felt shocking. Lifted shockingly. Yeah, but back in those days, there'd be virtually no research into strength. It was not a reputable area.
Yeah.
It was really only in the 90s onwards that academia showed any interest.
Yeah.
Anthony and I did that, except he still managed to pull off the Australian record.
Yeah, but I wasn't happy with it. It looked terrible. All right, so everyone is listening now. You've got most of Powerlifting Australia that are going to be listening to this because everyone wants answers as to what's happened in this last week. It's been a big week. We all knew there was a court case going on, like Powerlifting Australia, Oceania Powerlifting, and yourself took the IPF to the International Sports Commission Court, was it?
Well, to multiple courts, but the highest court was the civil court in Luxembourg.
Yeah, and you just recently won that case. That happened this week, so everyone's losing their minds. Everyone wants to know more information, which is what we're going to offer. So, we're going to go into that now. So really, everyone just wants to know, and we want to know, and give you a chance to explain, what does this mean? So we know that on the surface it says everything's being knocked back for the IPF to 2007. So we are still affiliated with the IPF because of that. So what does this mean, though? What explain the situation to everyone and what it means moving forward.
Well, how many hours have we got? There's a long history of that, which I'll spare you for the moment, and maybe we'll come back to. But in essence, in 2017 at the IPF General Assembly, Powerlifting Australia, Oceania Powerlifting Federation, and purportedly myself were exited, kicked out of the IPF. So we had an existing case or cases running concerning similar actions going way back to 2015. One of the key elements of the original case was that the IPF arguably was not properly incorporated, in that it was a small small, in our language, charitable society in Luxembourg, and supposedly each member had an address and an occupation in Luxembourg. So the legislation there contemplated that only individuals who are resident in Luxembourg would be members of this society. So it didn't contemplate a whole bunch of international sporting federations being members. So that was one argument. The other argument was that for some 10 years, the annual corporate lodgings of the IPF had never been made. So even if you said they existed in the first place, that lapsed. And thirdly, and as it turned out most importantly, the legislation in Luxembourg required some 2/3 of members, so even if you accept all these national federations are members, have to be physically present to pass resolutions at a general meeting, General Assembly. And that clearly had never happened. So that case was trundling along. Then we were expelled after that case had been sitting there waiting for a hearing for nearly 2 years. We appealed that to CAS, the Court of Arbitration of Sport in Switzerland, directly, but that was held over waiting for the determination of the higher court in Luxembourg with this long-standing case. So lo and behold, just last week we finally got a ruling, which was, in our opinion, not complete, but complete enough because it said it's pretty obvious there's never been a quorum at an IPF meeting since it was incorporated in Luxembourg way back in 2007.
So
every General Assembly's decisions, plural, are void.
So to put it in layman's terms, to make these votes and these decisions that they wanted to and that they voted on, such as kicking out PA and everything and yourself, they needed 2/3 of the member nations to be there.
Yep.
That never happened.
Never happened.
So they did
Absolutely never happened.
And that's in their constitution, right? That's
Yes.
what needs to happen. But
it's in the law of Luxembourg.
it's in the law. Okay.
So the constitution of any entity, any corporate, cannot override the law of the land,
Yeah.
be it Luxembourg or anywhere else.
So they can't even like change their own laws on that either to like in the future be able to make votes with less than 2/3 of the people.
No, they're snookered.
Present.
They're snookered. In actual fact, a couple of years ago, they tried at a meeting, and the ruling specifically said, sorry, catch 22, you never had 2/3 to change your voting procedures anyway.
Yeah.
So to go forward, to do anything, they have to get 2/3 of the nations in the room. Now, the IPF claims 90 member federations. One, you've got a great logistical problem to get 60 out of 90 there. And we can kindly say the existence of some of those federations is fairly dubious.
Yeah.
So to get 60 out of 90 when some of them are phantoms in the room is going to be very difficult, in fact impossible.
What do you think of how they're going to do it in the future then?
Well, they are, to use the Australian word, stuffed.
Yeah.
They are absolutely snookered because theoretically, at law, Gaston doesn't exist. He was never elected.
Okay.
There's no such thing as Gaston.
Who's Gaston?
It's the 2008 executive is still in play. Who was on the 2008 executive? I was. Gaston wasn't.
All right. So
raw lifting never existed. The weight classes have never changed, etc., etc., etc.
So that they've been knocked back into the Stone Age.
Yes.
Like of powerlifting.
Yeah. Now I suspect they'll just try and ignore it, but then we have to chase them with a contempt of court action, and so on and so forth. So it can go on. But
Yeah.
I suspect they'll try and stonewall.
So through the court, officially we're back in. Everything's back to 2007. What does that mean for them? What do they have to do to get around this to move forward? So what do they have to do to get Raw back, to get the weight classes back, to get back to where they were this year?
I don't know. You have to ask them and their legal advisors. We got a garbled message from their lawyers, the equivalent of a QC. I'm sure he must have had a hard night when he sent it. He said, "Oh no, we really won because we weren't dissolved. Yes, there weren't quorums. Yes, we've got a lot of work to do."
So yeah, to put
in other words, they've conceded. There's snookered.
Yeah, so to put you in their shoes, what would you do now? What would your next step be?
I'm not going to tell you because I'll take the advice. It's pretty obvious what they should have done 3 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, so you've won that court case. They're back to 207. All their decisions since then are void.
Yep.
What does that mean for PA now that World Powerlifting's there?
Powerlifting Australia is the national affiliate to the IPF, to the 2008 and if it is current IPF. Oceania Powerlifting Federation is the regional body, and I'm a member of the executive committee of ye old IPF.
And does that can you be affiliated? Can PA stay affiliated with both World Powerlifting and the IPF?
Yes, and indeed we will.
And we can compete in both.
Yes.
Without any repercussions.
Yes.
So that's a big question we got in. So the way we're doing the questions today, we're just asking them. We got so many. We're just asking them, and Rob's going to expand on them. We're not specifying who asked them because most people ask the same questions.
Okay.
So.
Well, maybe I could explain that a bit further.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask.
The esteemed Mr. Keller's gone around saying a national body cannot be in two federations, and when asked to point out at a meeting in New Zealand where that is, there was just the sound of crickets in the background. So there's nothing in the IPF constitution rules, assuming you give any weight to them, certainly at 2008, to say a national body can't be in two federations. There is, even in 2008, bylaw 14.9, which I actually wrote for them back in the 90s, which says if a lifter referee coach takes part in a non-IPF contest, they can be subject to a 12-month penalty. So theoretically that still exists. However, I probably more than anybody in the world knows how 14.9 ticks, because we have a similar clause in Australia which we apply. There was a big problem. Competition law has moved on since those days, since the mid-90s. And secondly, there is not necessarily a direct legal relationship between lifters, referees and coaches in the IPF. There is probably, again assuming the IPF still exists, a direct legal relationship between the IPF and its purported members of national federations. But whether they can actually apply 14.9 is very, very dubious. We keenly await the first test case. When you compete in an IPF Worlds, at weigh-in you have to sign a declaration saying you accept the anti-doping rules. And that's done for the very same reason. There is not a legal relationship between the athlete and the federation, and therefore maybe the anti-doping rules don't apply. Nowhere do they get the athlete to sign, or the lifter or the referee or the coach to sign that we accept 14.9.
So you're saying that, so next year, let's say, a high-level lifter competed at World Powerlifting, a World Powerlifting Worlds or international competition, assuming the IPF moves forward and all this goes through, you can't say for sure whether they're going to get banned or not from the IPF.
No,
but it won't affect them in PA.
This year, prior to all the World Powerlifting events, IPF's put out threats, we're going to get you under 14.9, we're going to get you, we're going to get you, we're going to get you. Nothing has happened because they know they can do nothing.
Yeah. So assuming, like, you know, but and again, we won't know until it happens, right?
We're very happy to run a test case.
Yeah.
Maybe you can be the first cab off the rank.
I don't mind. I'll do it.
That's actually an interesting question. Do you think Anthony is going to...
Take us through, because I know in other sports there's challenges to where they've got equivalents of 14.9, there's challenges ongoing now, I believe, in swimming and ice skating for starters.
Okay.
Do you think Anthony's going to pass his recent drug test? Always easy.
Toss a coin.
This guy.
He's looking pretty jacked.
I had people messaging me like, are you worried? I was like, no, I'm not on drugs. Like, why would I be worried?
It's ridiculous.
Moving forward, that's something we can touch on next time. That was a good experience.
Are you dodging the question?
No, I'm saying that I'm going to pass.
Bring Asada out, please.
So, yeah. That doesn't affect PA lifters, though. They can compete IPF if they chose to now.
Our strategy would be, we're the IPF affiliate. We have to act accordingly, again, assuming you believe there is an IPF. So we're not going to block anybody who wants to go IPF internationally. Our main thrust would be to continue with World Powerlifting as the new order and to get that stronger and stronger. And obviously next year has got a much more attractive schedule of events. The only worthwhile event the IPF's got is their main Worlds each June.
Is Powerlifting Australia and the committee allowing this because that's really the future of the sport? Like, it'd be devastating if you didn't do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the future of the sport. It's the clean sheet we're starting with.
Yeah.
You know, we've got the growing pains of a startup organisation, but you know, we've made incredible progress, I'd argue, for just 8 months of existence.
I think a lot of people have, like, if you look online and social media, people that are at least in the know are putting their trust and, you know, want to be part of World Powerlifting. Like,
yes.
I'd love to go to the IPF Worlds and compete for my own reasons, because I think it'd be funny after getting kicked out to go there, and I just think it'd be a good time.
Well, I can't wait for the first IPF executive meeting when I turn up.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. I wonder if you're going to get let in. But other than that, like, for me, and I've said online repeatedly that I'm really excited about World Powerlifting and everything I want to do, and with my, albeit small platform, want to help move that forward and get to know more about that. And which is why we're going to go into that after this. We do have a few more things we want to touch on in regards to this, though. So what happens with the APU and what happens with them as a federation? And then the follow-up question to that is what happens to the team they've chosen for IPF Worlds next year?
Okay. IPF and APU and WRPF, I think are the initials, were served with a notice which has been made public to all member nations of the IPF, a cease and desist notice in effect, requiring or demanding that IPF basically put OPF and Powerlifting Australia back on the website, etc., and that they withdraw any purported recognition of APU and WRPF. That's copied to those two bodies, APU and WRPF, giving them till 6 p.m. Monday to comply. Otherwise, we'll launch the necessary actions from that. Now, APU has already got a case from us for misleading deceptive conduct, which is lodged in the Federal Circuit Court in Australia. The misleading deceptive conduct being, one, claiming they had ASADA testing when they don't, and two, more profoundly, not informing potential members who they canvassed to join that these legal proceedings were pending and claiming that their prime selling point was IPF affiliation when there was in severe doubt. And that's obviously damaged the people who handed over money to them. I mean, what membership system they've got is very opaque. But more importantly, Powerlifting Australia is a relevant party. A party was standing because they've finagled away certain existing members and stopped or cajoled potential members of us to join them instead. So we've suffered economic loss.
So they have to stop advertising that they're IPF affiliate as of Monday?
They absolutely have to, because they're toast, basically.
Yeah, but they can continue
conduct now. They weren't before, they are now.
They can continue on as a federation?
They could go on as an XYZ federation like the 6, 8, 10 that are out there.
Yep.
But they've lost their one and only selling point.
Yeah. So what happens with the lifters they've chosen for the IPF Worlds team? It's just void.
It's void.
Yeah, so their lifters, they don't have an IPF team now. So all those guys that think they're going to the Worlds next year aren't.
No.
For them.
Well,
yeah, is there
we have to determine our final position, but they could apply to come back to Powerlifting Australia or to join Powerlifting Australia, but they'd have to go through whatever process we have for establishing teams.
Well, that actually leads on to the next question. What happens to the members banned from PA because they switched to APU?
That remains to be decided. We've had one already, and probably have to be case by case. We've just got to be careful that we just don't denigrate our own principles.
Yeah.
This one had a pretty good case. They never actually lifted for APU. They joined on paper only. There were some personal reasons why that happened, so we let them back in. But there's about 30, I think.
Well, that's the thing, because there's some lifters who've done that and they have no hard feelings towards PA, but they just simply wanted to be on the world stage, and now they're in a situation where they can't go to the IPF because the only affiliate in Australia is
potentially,
PA.
Yeah,
And potentially this
some
is.
of them have been playing dumb. There's people I've spoken to and said, listen, you're probably getting left out on a limb. If you are confused, just wait to 2019. I said, no, APU is a wonderful thing. I'm joining. Yeah.
Yeah, so you did warn
people. And there's
people.
plenty in the category of sort of, rebels without a cause, or rebels who thought they had a cause, just wanted to cause trouble, sort of malcontents. And
There would have
So
been
case
people
by
who are
case-
spiteful and whatnot as well. Yeah.
there's spiteful ones.
So
we
case
just
by
have-
case basis, but if
Yeah.
you've got a lifter, there's like a couple high level lifters that lifted because they want to go IPF Worlds. Because it is a case by case basis, is there potential that those rulings are going to be sympathetic to them and go, look, we realise that you didn't do it out of spite. It wasn't because you hated PA. It's because you thought this was the only way. And the way it was advertised was the only way, right? So as a lifter, it can kind of be a little bit overwhelming. So a lot of us just went, and a lot of high level lifters went, we're going to stay World Powerlifting. We believe in this new federation. A lot of people see the IPF as the be all and end all. So what happens with them? Is there a chance they come back in without the 1 year suspension?
Well, it starts to get messy because you work out how severe the mens rea was, and who was spiteful and who was not.
Yeah.
It's hard to quantify that. We probably want to stick to some firm principles, but just like in a drug testing case, if you can show that the supplement company deliberately misled you and you made your inquiries but you were given false information, you get a reduced penalty. So again, we'll probably look at the circumstances of each.
Best case scenario would be reduced penalty.
Yes.
Yeah, but like because of principles, you'd have to stick to your guns.
The first thought would be we have to stick to our guns. The rule is there. The rule's there for a
Well,
reason.
as soon as you break your own rule, then people will see weakness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, as it stands now, we are affiliated with the IPF as Powerlifting Australia. You have said that it's probably not going to be a smooth thing though. Like they're going to fight it. I think everyone assumes that and knows that. Yep. If we are though, and we do become affiliated, and this goes through, and you take them back to court again, and they can't fight it anymore, what happens in regards to the accusations of corruption and everything, which led to all this in the start, right?
There's still court cases galore. We can still appeal ourselves because we didn't win the dissolution of the IPF. It was just sort of passed over. We didn't win the issue of who is a member.
So dissolution of the IPF means?
Another, in that they were invalidly incorporated in the first place.
Okay. So that means no more IPF is what you were trying to go for?
Well, we're saying that's not necessarily what the aim of the exercise was. That only came out actually relatively late in the piece.
Okay.
When we finally got the corporate documents and we realised what a sham it was. There's so many possibilities here. As we said, if they refuse to honour the ruling of the court, we can pursue contempt of court, which then leads to a damages claim further down. There's still a whole treasure trove of actions. There's some of the financial matters. They could be criminal offences in Luxembourg. We can take a criminal case on. I think the statute of limitations is pretty long there.
Yeah. For all the international listeners, could you explain? Because I assume that based on what's happened with Australia beating the IPF and everything going back to 2007, people are going to be annoyed and maybe blame Australia, whoever was affiliated with the court, coming to that decision. Is there a way of you explaining to them what you were trying to achieve in short, so that they understand why? So that way, because Australians might go overseas, to international comps in the IPF in the future, and we may be hated because of what's happened.
Now, the IPF's got a long, proud tradition of corruption going way back. In the 90s was the heyday of Heine Kobrik, who's passed away now, who was engaged in various visa scams for Eastern Bloc countries in return for payments. That was well established and he resigned. He introduced a gentleman named Gaston Parage, telling us, this guy's just a clerk in Luxembourg, he'll do a bit of work, he won't cause any trouble. And, it's been downhill since then. But essentially, Gaston's, a dumb version of Sepp Blatter. He controls everything, he hollows out all the committees to make sure there's just patsies involved, right down to the grassroots of the organisation. Anybody who's a political enemy who seems to be smart or stands up to him is a threat, so he'll get rid of them. So people like Mani Khosravi from Iran were booted out. Susumi Yoshida from Japan, booted out by one means or another, and so on and so forth. So I wasn't public enemy number one for a while, but as he went down the list, I soon became public enemy number one. And that's because I was chairman of the Anti-Doping Commission. And Gaston, many times, quite a number of times, told me not to test Russia. I said, you can't interfere in testing, Gaston. It has to be done independently on the basis of the WADA criteria of track record of a nation, changes in performance, etc., etc. There's no shadow of doubt about that. I'm very happy to testify in court to that effect, and have and will. He did everything he could to block out-of-competition testing, because statistically out-of-competition testing produced twice the rate of positives, 8% versus 4%.
Which is quite high, which is very high.
Yes,
very high, yeah.
Yes, most sports have about 0.9%, less than 1%.
Okay.
Well, what is it, weightlifting pushing 4%, and the Olympic committee's getting annoyed with them, right?
Well, I don't think they're anything like 4%. I think they're less than 2%.
Yeah, okay. I heard it was quite high, and there's the risk of getting out of the sport if it goes too high, right?
Yes. Biological passport, in other words, sequential analysis of samples to establish a positive. No way, blocked. What else? Retrograde testing. Gaston said straight out, and he got to pass through a Congress. There's been no retrograde testing, directly contradicting.
What's retrograde testing?
Testing of old samples.
Okay.
So you might be familiar with the Olympics, the IOC.
Yeah.
Did a number of tests back on 2012, 2008 samples, because science had moved on in the meantime, and lo and behold, there's 100 10 or something positives. Found half of them in weightlifting.
And that's not happening in the IPF?
No, Gaston has said, and it's passed through Congress, that he's urging there will not be retrograde testing.
Does that happen in PA?
I don't know, because ASADA does all that.
Okay.
That's handled by ASADA. So ASADA obviously follows the WADA protocols.
Yeah.
So just so the listeners understand, is that you're trying to fight corruption because you believe the future of natural powerlifting is natural powerlifting, and anyone who's not natural is cheating, and you're trying to stop that.
The sport's headed nowhere if it remains a drug sport.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And so this all come about because you were trying to get rid of corruption.
Yes, and there's more than that. There's the question of allocation of world championships and the hotel arrangements and hotel funding arrangements around those. The subject of incorporation, I knew there was a problem. I kept saying, where is the IPF incorporated?
Yeah.
He'd say Luxembourg. I said, surely we've got to see some documents. It's just amazing. Nobody in the IPF, except Gaston and I believe the treasurer, Dietmar Wolf, knew where and how the IPF was incorporated. In the whole sport, no one knew.
Yeah.
So moving forward...
So therefore I had to be got rid of, and there were various manoeuvres carried out in 2015 to sideswipe me, and then I was disappeared off the website, basically, and that's how the first court case got started.
Okay. And that's why, and
that brought out.
They said they kicked you out because you were taking to court and just causing trouble for the sake of it.
Yes. Well, leaving aside the legal principle, nobody can be punished for pursuing their legal rights. That's just nonsense. I mean,
yeah,
they compounded it. One of the lawyers said of Gaston, "This is the dumbest defendant I've ever seen. He just keeps digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's going to come in on top of him." And lo and behold, it has. Because what came out when they got the case shifted to Luxembourg, because initially I went to the Court of Arbitration in Sport, so a smallish sports tribunal in Switzerland, and he claimed a great triumph because he got the forum shifted to the Higher Court in Luxembourg. He said, it's a constitutional matter, therefore Luxembourg law applies, thinking that I and Powerlifting Australia and whoever else would not spend the money to go to Luxembourg, but of course we did, and that brought out all these constitutional defects, which led to the ultimate downfall.
How are you going to now moving forward with all this? And they've been knocked back to 2007. On paper, we are re-affiliated. How are you going forward? How are you going? Because obviously you're not going to just ignore all the corruption. How are you going to address that moving forward now?
Well, the volley's been served to the IPF now. We've got to see how they react to this order, to this decision. So we have to play it by ear in the next few weeks to few months and see what comes back. But certainly the low-hanging fruit is their two affiliates in Australia are right here, APU and WRPF. So they'll be served with orders, further orders, basically next week. The misleading deceptive conduct claim will be the first.
But as far as the drug testing issues and everything, how do you have a plan to make sure they're doing that legitimately in the future,
or
you can't?
It's too hard, basically. For years now, people have been tugging at my shirt saying, you'll never stop corruption in the IPF, Robert. You know that. It's been going for 20, 30 years. You'll never do it. Set up a new world body. To which I said, you've got to be kidding. How many world bodies are there? 20, 30, 40? Said, no, let's do it. I said, well, who's actually going to do it? And they looked back at me. All right. No, we'll keep trying with what we've got. And it's only this year that I've given in and said that's the only way to do it. So forget trying to solve the IPF's problems.
So you're
it's
kind
too
of saying
intractable. We have to start again with a blank sheet of paper.
You've done what you can. You've brought it all to the surface, which I think is a massive thing. You've raised awareness for it now, and obviously everyone that was denying, and this is something that I think a lot of people online are realising now, especially this week. They're like, okay, Robert, PA, Oceana took him to court. They, a lot of people believe the IPF, saying it was just drama. I think now a lot of people are going to realise that there is weight to what you were doing, and that there was reason behind it. So now, are you saying that as long as you've done what you can and you're more focused on more powerlifting, you're happy to take a step back?
I don't think we can solve the IPF problems. They're insoluble. But the sport doesn't want the black eye of the IPF hanging around. So we will tidy up the mess as much as we can. So that means criminal charges for defrauding funds. If it means appealing further the Luxembourg ruling, whatever it takes we'll do, but it's got to unfold. That's not the main game anymore. The main game is to go forward with World Powerlifting.
Yeah, which is what we'll segue into in just 1 second. We've got 2 more questions that'll take really quick. Will any of this, so the re-affiliation getting knocked back to 2007, affect any of the Powerlifting Australia and World Powerlifting competition calendar? Will it affect any of the competitions? No, has no effect on that. And lastly, I'm sure later on we have some general questions. There's some IPF stuff, but nothing major. Someone just wanted to know, do you know anything about the new IPF formula they're using?
No, very little. I think it's Joe Marksteiner's one. But no, I've tried a few times to modify my formula. It's not too bad an effort, if I say so myself, from the era when it was done in the mid-90s, when there's no internet and data was hard to come by. I must say I did it twice with much the same results in the mid-80s, did an Australian version in the mid-90s, international version. But I've tried to bring in a second bench press formula, and twice none other than Gaston's blocked it, saying, oh, it'll confuse people. It might confuse Gaston, but I don't think it confuse most lifters. So the bench press formula, the one and only formula applied to the bench press is clearly wrong. It favours heavy people.
Yeah.
Because there's a different performance body weight curve for the bench press. It's much closer to linear.
On that, when do you have a plan to update that?
When I get a spare 100 hours, time's a bit hard to come by at the moment. But yeah, next year.
So the plan is within the next year or so, have a new updated Wilks formula.
Yes.
So we're going to,
and it'll have to be a separate bench press formula.
We're going to see,
and this one I'll properly copyright and patent.
So not everyone can use it.
Correct.
So then, what we're going to see is a lot of these super heavyweight lifters. Their scores are going to come down on overall, or
with the data I had at the time, sort of deliberately, I had the two ends a little bit soft because people couldn't handle the truth back then. The ancient Schwartz formula and Malone formulas were completely nuts. They massively favoured very light lifters and to a degree favoured very big lifters. And what I came with was sort of revolutionary in the sense of saying, no, look, the big bulk of the lifters are in the middle classes. Therefore, biology being what it is, the greatest number of elite top performers will be in the middle classes. So I had to sort of jiggle it just a little bit so that the number of best lifters would sort of match the ratio of lifters in each bodyweight class.
Can you take...
And there's a lot more data now, but it's not that far wrong. So the answer is the very lights and the very heavies might find it just a little bit tougher. Very heavy in women, I think it is, it's an arguable case that it's a bit tough on very heavy women. When I did it in the mid-90s, there were no heavy women. I mean, pre-internet, I actually had to send a letter with lick the stamp, right off to all the national federations, ask for their databases, such as they were in those days. I got a surprisingly good response. But there was something like 20 women in the world over 90 kilos.
At the time.
And one of them was in the 75s and total 750. Perhaps obvious reasons. So you scratch your head. There's no data there, so I have to guess there. So it's hard to tell because there's still.
So you're not going to be
only
changing. You're just going to be updating it because of how big it's.
The new separate bench press form is the biggest deal.
Yeah,
and a bit of tweaking.
Yeah.
With a lot.
Could you take the listeners through the process of creating a formula like that?
Oh, it's a quadratic at the end of the day, but basically it was a regression analysis done by hand.
Okay.
I looked at the rate of change, I had all this data, 10,000 lifters, looked at the rate of change as performance and created a curve and just got that curve, took it to the Melbourne Uni Maths department. I spent about 1,000 hours on it. They spent 15 minutes. I said, can you give me a quadratic that matches this curve? Bang, they did.
Yeah.
So
I have no idea what that means.
Well, it seems to have worked because it does represent usually what someone lifts based on their weight. You know, how impressive it is or what level of performance it is.
It's certainly better than the preceding formulas I had.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's due a brush up.
But yeah, it needs to be tweaked.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
Before we move on to World Powerlifting, is there anything you want to do to summarise this IPF court case, or you think we've covered it all?
I think you got the gist of it, the basic principle. I could go on for hours with the fine detail.
Is there anything specific you want to add that you don't think we've touched on that you think that people should know? This is all about... This Strengthcast today is all about, giving information on this and World Powerlifting. Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't asked or covered that you think people should know or that you want people to know?
No, I think we should look to the future. I think we should look at what we can. There's plenty of skullduggery I could itemise, and I'm relatively free at the moment to talk about these things, but they'll come out in due course and they'll be properly documented.
I feel like we've covered that. Now, a big thing we want to, Tyler and I, and we talk about a lot is World Powerlifting. You went over why you created it, clean slate. You know, we can, well, you can, not we, ensure that, you know, testing's done better, there's no dodginess, which is why World Powerlifting obviously was started. What's the main differences between World Powerlifting and other federations that are tested? Like, what, not just the drug testing side, what are the biggest differences? Obviously, you added new rules, new weight classes for females, some changes to the male ones. The massive thing was that weight class for females is a huge thing. Like, we don't understand why it wasn't done ages ago, you know, because you have women competing in the, you know, mid 100 kilos, like they're 120, 130, which is an awesome addition. What else? What other big differences are there?
Well, I'd say the quality of the people involved and the integrity thereof, but in terms of nuts and bolts, we've created a new rule book, which is primarily written by myself, which is not that different from the intent of the IPF rule system. If you read the IPF rule book, it's like spaghetti. It just makes no sense at all. Though, you know, most people sort of know the intent of most of the rules. It's very ad hoc. So it's written in plain English, but the changes aren't that big, but in a way they are. So the bodyweight classes are tweaked in that the men's are pulled up. So the lightest class is 62, go 62, 69, 77, 85, 94, and then it's the same, 105, 120, 120 plus. Using the data of the 90s, which is rough and ready, but that's a much more even distribution. There's roughly 15-16% of lifters in each of those first 5 or 6 classes, and it drops to 12%, 8%, 4 or 5%, which you can't avoid with high body weights.
Well,
we
people just aren't that big.
And we noticed that you, like, obviously, we all noticed that you changed the weight classes for the men's, or whoever made that decision, but a lot of women were questioning as to why all their middleweight classes stayed the same.
They thinned out, they narrowed by about a kilo. So
They went down.
63, 72 gap.
Was a few of them didn't even change at all, though.
Same as the men. So women, 47 became 48, 52 became 53, 57 became 58, 63 became 64. So it was a kilo all the way through,
So
and then 72, 70,
basically,
84,
because
so
of the
same.
lower percentages, they changed less of people thinking that they didn't change as much as the men's. But that's
right.
essentially why.
You can get really technical. There's 2 criteria of the weight classes. There's a percentage of the world's lifting population in a particular class range, and secondly, there's the range of performance that class covers. So a layman might say, oh, look, women has got a big jump from 64 to 72. Yeah, maybe, but the range of performance is just as big as the range of performance from 48 to 53. Or is no bigger than the range of performance
Yeah,
from 48
just
to
because the
53.
number's smaller, but it's the percentage is
So
different.
someone can say, oh, why don't we have a 68 kilo class halfway? But equally you could say, why don't we have a 50 kilo class halfway between 48 and 53? It's just as fair or unfair.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The other issues are you have to inverted commas. The expectation is you have an equal number of men's and women's classes. So we've gone 8 for 8. The IOC, and of course that filters down even to us through various other games and ruling bodies, have decreed, yes, you must have equal number of men's and women's classes, and also you can only have meaningful classes, and there's a reasonable population of competitors in each class. So there's various rules around. So in the Pacific Games, for example, unless you have 3 or 4 competitors, medals aren't awarded, and similar thinking in the IOC. So weightlifting, we're pinged back to 7 and 7, and they've tried to get around it to a degree. They have national level classes which are 10 and 10, 10 men and 10 women. Wrestling was put back to 4 and 4 sort of thing. So you've got to have a meaningful number of competitors in each class. Because people say, oh, well, why don't you have a 68 class? Why don't you have a 140 class?
Yep. But either way you change your weight classes, like, people are always going to complain, right? Like, you get the male class went from 59 to 62. I had 59 kilo males messaging going, oh man, how am I going to compete against 62 kilo guys? Like, either way, if you put it lower, you put it higher, people are going to complain.
There's always going to be someone in the middle of a weight class.
On the whole, the feedback's been absolutely positive.
Yeah, but that's like, there's always going to be a small group of people that complain, but like the majority has been...
Because there's a better fit with 62, 69, etc., more people are comfortable, more people are
sort of and you want to appeal to
the masses.
Yeah, to the masses, but also you can't argue with the maths, right? Which is the reason you chose those weight classes.
Yes.
And so I think to say to those people, just because you're the minority, it can't be catered to you just because you're coming in really light, right?
Yeah,
like,
correct.
Because it caters to the majority.
Because you're not really catering to them. So if we had a 140 class or a 56 class, there'd be one competitor at the Worlds or something like that, or 3, and therefore it's not recognised. I don't know if it still applies. The Sports Commission had a rule, the rule of 8. To recognise a gold medal, there had to be 8 competitors. To recognise a silver medal, there had to be 16 competitors. To recognise a bronze medal, there had to be 24 competitors.
I still think there should be a 125 class, but that's just because I'm fat.
Correct, because you're grossly obese. You have a special fatties class.
He said obese, not obese. All right, so World Powerlifting, we know what it's about. This year, I competed at the World Championships, the first ones. Tyler coached there, you coached there. The people were amazing. There was a lot of drug testing going on, which was good to see.
Yep.
All proper drug testing as well.
All negative, I might add.
All negative, so you
All
got the results,
come out, yes.
which is amazing.
Yep.
So that was affiliated with 100% Raw. Correct me if I'm using the wrong word.
In this transition year, we had to join with 100% Raw. So World Powerlifting is constituted by 3 big regional members, which is 100% Raw, the former standalone body, which in turn has somewhere between 12 and 20 nations. Oceania Powerlifting Federation, which has its own swathe of nations beneath, including Australia and New Zealand, and World Powerlifting China, which we just created, China just being huge, which also includes Hong Kong, China. So we had a ready-made event. The 100% Raw Worlds were there. We had like a few months' notice to get a World Championships happening. People wanted it, so we slotted in to 100% Raw. So that did bring some sort of, not exactly baggage, but sort of confusion because they had their own weight classes, etc., we had to work with.
And people expect this, so nobody's complained about that. Because we were just like, sweet, we want to see World Powerlifting do well. The fact that we had an international event that we could go to was amazing. Why 100% Raw? Why was that the federation you chose?
Because I looked around, and like I said, there's got to be 30. I just gave up in the end. There's so many. Some of them just completely wacky. There's one in Russia, has 4 lifts. It's a paramilitary powerlifting organisation. It has squat, bench press, deadlift, and grenade throwing. You think of it, it's out there.
So Russian.
But when it came down to it, there seemed to be only 2 who were genuine about drug testing and had raw or reasonably raw lifting. And 100% raw was the leader of that. And they're very strong in Canada and USA.
Yeah, well, we met the head of it. He was a really good guy. He was really, again, adamant about drug testing. He was talking, we were in the car with him and he was so excited, and you could just tell he is as passionate about you as drug-free lifting, which I think is hard to come by, right? A lot of people kind of, I think, like to just turn a blind eye and go, oh, we test, but, whatever happens, happens. Whereas he's all for drug-free lifting, same as you, which a lot of, I assume most PA members are. That's why we compete in it, because we know, a lot of people go, you can never have a completely clean sport, and that's the truth. You never can, but you can get as close as you can. You can do as much as you possibly can, right, as the head of a federation, which I think we do, and which shows that World Powerlifting will as well, because, again, is it safe to say you're the head of World Powerlifting?
I'm one of 7 board members.
One of 7 board members, and all equally interested in drug-free sport.
Yes, absolutely.
And also it had the 4th most impressive movement, the strict curl.
Yes, that's an 100% raw. That isn't. But that's fine. It was a preliminary event. 100% raw runs it, and they get a lot of numbers. I was surprised Anthony didn't enter, actually.
I should have totally entered it.
Yeah, I would have done terrible.
But World Powerlifting's 2 events are powerlifting, squat, bench press with deadlift, and bench press only. That's our only 2 events.
Yeah. So in regards to World Powerlifting, what are you doing to ensure a cleaner sport?
We're spending a lot of money, doing a lot of testing. So we're setting up all the infrastructure. People say, why haven't you got a website? Well, there's a couple of answers to that. One, the quotes range up to 60 grand to set up the website we want. But 2, we've got to have the actual infrastructure to advertise to the world. We have got what it takes. So we're WADA compliant, and we've adopted the WADA model rules. We've been doing WADA testing through the WADA labs at the events we've run this year. We'll be establishing a registered testing pool by 1st of January, and we'll start out competition testing. It comes back to what I said right at the beginning. It's the people. No system works without people, without the intent to do the right thing there. So we intend to follow the WADA standards, which says you hunt out, you target test problem nations, problem individuals, problem coaches, and test them. We will try as best we can, because obviously more and more federations are joining, we will try and vet out at the start, because I know more than anybody that once you get trouble in your system, it's so hard to get it out versus preventing trouble getting in the first place. So we won't necessarily accept federations unless we're happy they've got an anti-doping program, or at least an anti-doping culture that makes them a good fit.
Well, that's something we said last week on the last fortnight on the Strengthcast. Last episode I was with Alana, and we were talking the World Championships are good. There were hiccups, and we're interested to hear your point of view on how the World Championships ran. But one thing I did say, and I've said to everyone that's asked, the community there was amazing. The 100% raw people were really good, and I think, like you said, you affiliated with them because the culture is, anti-drug, and I think that's really important, right? Same as powerlifting Australia. You don't get people talking about drugs. You don't get people supporting other people trying to cheat test, and 100% raw is very much like that, which helps keep a cleaner sport as well, right? Like when the athletes are keeping each other accountable too. Like if someone came in here and went, I want to compete PA, but I've done drugs before, I'll be like, hey man, awesome, go to a different federation. Like, and I think it's important to have that culture, right? Like where the lifters don't entertain it either. Yeah. And that's what it seems like with them, where everyone kind of joins together and wants to be clean. And
correct. That's why we're happy to ally meld with them.
So that's a big reason, is the community.
Yes, yes.
And the Irish were there, and they know how to party.
So you mentioned about out-of-comp drug testing. What are you doing, or what will World Powerlifting do to ensure that lifters that ought to be tested more are tested more?
Well, again, we established a registered testing pool. Probably most members of Power Australia are familiar. Everybody in Power Australia lodges are whereabouts of one kind or another. But as you go up the performance chain, you get monitored more and more closely. And right up the top is so-called registered testing pool, which ASADA runs. So you have to log in your whereabouts on a 24-hour, 365-day-a-week basis. So we'll establish similar. We can't whereabouts every lifter in the world, but we'll have the pool up the top that will monitor, and they'll be selected not just on performance but on suspicion as well.
So if someone comes in, they don't do well, but they look like a drug user, because there's a look, right?
The WADA standard on testing and investigation, I think it's in clause 10 or thereabouts, sets out the criteria for testing. Now, it's not random, it is all meant to be targeted, and they say the criteria for targeting are logical things: changes in performance, changes in appearance, coming from a nation or a region with a poor track record of anti-doping, of testing, association with coaches or the like who are under suspicion or have a poor track record. So our RTP will reflect that as much as performance. So obviously the very, very top people have got to be there as well. Yeah.
So if someone's training at a gym where most people are drug users, but they're one of a few in that gym that competes in World Powerlifting or something, they will be
that
will be taken into account.
There has to be a human decision-making process there.
Which I think is ideal, right? Because as much as random testing is great, like, let's be real, people that are 105 kilos and totaling 500 kilos while they're, trying hard, they're probably not on drugs, right? Yeah. Like, it needs to be, it can't be fully random, or else you won't catch many people.
Yeah. Look at Powerlifting Australia, the top people aren't a problem because they know they're going to be tested. They know they're going to come out of the woodwork. The problem is out in the mulga, in obscure locations where people think they're under the radar, and they're quite happy to live in this world of delusion, you could argue, where they lift only in local competitions, thinking they're not going to be tested, and we have to ferret those people out. So the RTP system has its limits, but then again, the answer to that is you select on the targeting criteria as well as the performance criteria. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. It's actually reassuring as well, right? Because that's what you want. You don't want that. You don't want to look at someone and be like, "Oh man," or think. You can think they're on drugs, and then the chance, you don't want it just to be random whether they're going to get tested or not, right? Like, correct. Or if you see one person put 100 kilos on their total in a year, but they're already a high-level lifter, you don't want that to come down to chance. You want to know. Yep. You want a definite, hey, this guy's clean, this guy's not, or as close as you can get to a definite. How is World Powerlifting going to ensure drug testing compliance of affiliated federations, more so than the IPF as well? That's the important thing.
Well, answer, you don't take them on in the first place.
Okay.
That's the first answer to that. Again, no system's perfect, but we will legislate accordingly to require them to have a system. You may be aware in the IPF, the majority of nations don't test.
Yep. So if a federation comes on, they sign up with World Powerlifting, like they become affiliated, and
we proposed a so-called integrity commission, or maybe the board or whatever, inspired by athletics, who established an integrity commission outside WADA.
So if they're not doing enough testing, they'll review that, and then they go, they get pulled up on it, they get a chance, or do they get kicked out?
We would do our own testing, or there'll be a mechanism whereby, yes, they can be suspended or kicked out.
So they can be suspended, kicked out, and I think the important thing is the testing doesn't just come down to that federation, is what you just said, right? World Powerlifting will take control of that too.
Yes.
If need be.
We have signed to do testing at local meets already coming up.
That's
affiliates.
That's amazing. That's really good to hear. Like that, I think that's a really good answer.
Yeah.
So it's not all just reliant on the federation.
No, because obviously, the obvious problem is China. The obvious difficulty is China. It's a huge country. Difficulties, visas, getting testers in, getting samples out, etc., etc. Almost impossible for them to conduct their own testing. So we will intervene and basically spend the money, as we did in Shanghai.
And that's the difference, right, to other federations. It's a massive difference.
The will is there.
Yeah.
Well, the spirit is there.
But outside or without drugs or drug-free being the answer, why should people stay in that federation? What are the benefits outside of the obviously efficient drug testing?
In World Powerlifting?
Yeah.
Threw a spanner in the work style.
Well, that's a pretty big,
to some lifters,
advantage.
It's important as well. Outside, drug testing is one aspect, and there's other aspects of lifting.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got better, clearer rules. We don't muddy the waters. There is equipped up to the regional level, but it's raw lifting. It all means something. It's got a better spread of events. There's more available, so we're very allied with various fitness shows, FIBO and fitness shows.
And that was a very successul competition, the FIBO in Shanghai, right?
Yes.
It was really well run. Everyone
sensation.
had amazing things to talk about. I remember Cam came back and I think Liz competed there, but everyone had really good things to say. Apparently it was really efficient and really welcoming. But
yeah, that's one thing that's come out. Our contests are stunning to some people who are used to very messy events. Events are sort of based on getting hotel money out of people. They're just cash cows for the promoter. It's not like that.
It's all for the lifter.
It's for the lifter. It's for the sport.
Yeah.
So there's better presentation. Everybody's in uniforms. Everything starts on time. There's good MCs, etc., etc.
I think if there's one thing we can say as a definite is that as much as you can kind of insult people sometimes, like with the way you speak, because you're straight to the point, you're very direct.
Only you.
Only me, yeah. Call me a beast. I don't think anyone can deny, and especially now, that you are for the lifters, and that's your biggest interest, and which I think personally, this is my input to that question you asked, Tyler, is that when you do compete in a PA, or say even when we went to the World Powerlifting, it's for the lifters, right? Like you're not there trying to make money. You're there trying to give the lifters a good platform to perform off, and I think that's a good reason to stay. But you don't realise that unless you know Rob, and when you know Rob, you realise that's his main drive is for the lifter, but also that reflects in the federations, and I think that's a fair statement.
And it's a really good answer that you gave to that question, because it is a hard question to answer. But on what you said about the spread of competitions, which in Victoria and maybe New South Wales, there's a lot of competitions to go to and have during the year, but there's an issue of competitions in Northern Australia. What is your...
not so much Northern, but Darwin's okay. Cairns is strong. It's more... Adelaide's a black hole, and we're addressing that. We've got a club about to affiliate.
Yep.
Perth is pretty choppy.
And
we've now affiliated... we've got Onyx, let's run a few contests. I think they're in the south, and we've now got one legendary lifting about to start in the north. So, there is these sort of almost black holes. There's some weaker areas, but we're really addressing those.
So you're addressing them, and that's for the listeners, because I do have people who have asked me, they've been like, I want to stay PA, but I don't have many competitions to go to.
One of my clients, Sam Hall, is from Adelaide. He's a strong guy, but I coach him online now. and he's coming all the way down to Melbourne to compete in March at the Strength Fortress because there's nothing there for him.
No, there will be contests next year. For one thing, we've got the Masters Games. We've signed a contract to run the Australian Masters Games there, but there will be other contests there. We've got at least one club about to sign the dotted line.
So for the listeners from those areas of northern, eastern side of Australia, like Brisbane, places like that, and Adelaide and Perth, basically they can be reassured that there's going to be a place for them to compete in the future.
Brisbane's okay. We've just started a Gold Coast affiliated club. Brisbane's okay.
You've got Dave Napper and everything up
there.
there.
Yeah, we've got 3 strong clubs there.
Yep.
So I wouldn't say Brisbane's a massive problem.
That's actually where it's come from.
We have more opposition from other federations up there. That's the heartbeat of untested powerlifting.
And maybe that's where it's coming from, because I've got people from Brisbane saying that there's not enough competitions there.
Well, a couple of things there. Firstly, we've further addressed that by splitting all the nationals. So up to the last few years, we've had the Open Nationals restricted to 60, 70 lifters by invitation only at one of the fitness shows because we've only got that amount of time. And we've had a Juniors and Masters all in one location in Melbourne. And it's a big bun fight, 306 lifters this year. We've now broken it up into 3 events spread around. So Canberra, Cairns and Melbourne will have those 3 events. And the Open Nationals are not restricted as long as you can do B grade, which I think even you've done.
Jab.
You're in, sort of thing. So we've got 3 big events, at least spread down from north to south.
Yep.
That's one part of it. And as I said, we're sort of targeting the weak spots.
Yeah, well, it's at least the listeners know that that's a focus of PA.
So World Powerlifting, again, I don't want to stray too much off that. Something I really want to talk about. How many lifters were at the World Championships this year? 400 and something?
3 something, mid-300s.
Yeah, mid-300s. How many do you expect next year? Do you have an idea?
Well, next year's going to be different. It'll only be powerlifting and bench press, so all those extra events.
Curl and everything.
And the push-pull and all that. 100% Raw will have their own international event as a regional event, like the Oceania Championships.
Yeah.
It'll be 100% Raw Championships a little bit earlier.
But it won't be a World Championship.
No, so the World Championships in Calgary, October 3 to 6, will be just powerlifting and bench press. So I'm predicting still be in the 300s, but it's
more specific.
Winnowed down from a bigger pool.
Yeah, so it's not like 300 and something when you add in the curl and everything. It'll be 300.
So it'll be national team versus national team. The quality is so much higher.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. What's the plan to expand on World Powerlifting now? So now I realise we're in the first year. It's a hard question. Like we were talking about earlier, how, it takes us time to grow these things, but do you have a rough timeline that you have in your head or that World Powerlifting has planned out, and what are you going to do to expand on it and improve the competition or the level of competitor as well? What's the plan?
Well, firstly, there's organic growth, which is hard going, federation by federation. So aside from those clusters I mentioned, there's a few that signed up independently, Iran, Mongolia and the likes. So we'll certainly continue down that path. But hopefully, there can be takeovers. That there's so many of these international federations out there that some of them would be ripe, like 100% Raw did, to join in and be part of something that's bigger and more meaningful.
So you're kind of hoping that the goal is right, that the reputation of World Powerlifting gets around, that it is a true drug-free federation, all the your highest level of drug testing, highest standard of it, it's done efficiently and no dodginess. You're hoping that draws people in, which I think it will, because we want to
cleared away one hurdle. I hope we've cleared it away, that you can be a member of World Powerlifting and a member of the IPF. You can be a member of XYZ, you can join the Russian Grenade Throwing Federation if you want, but you cannot breach any of the WADA rules.
Which are like you can't compete at a competition where there's someone being banned
and that. Or be coached by somebody who's suspended or who has a criminal conviction for drugs in the last 6 years.
So if I wanted to go to a GPC comp and I could do that, so this is, I guess, just expanding on that. Not that I'm planning to, but if I could, that wouldn't be an issue if there were no ASADA banned lifters.
Outside Australia. In Australia, the politics are a bit different.
That's a Powerlifting Australia rule, not a World Powerlifting.
Yeah, but as far as World Powerlifting goes, yes, you could go and compete in, was it APA or something or other for 40 grand prize money, if there was nobody there who was currently suspended or had a criminal conviction, not wise, we would say, but
you can do it.
You're not sanctionable.
Yeah. So and then
you
so
want to go to IPF Worlds in Sweden next year, good luck to you. We certainly won't stop you, but yeah, there's no reason to sanction you.
Okay, well that's an improvement, right? Because that's not like a lot of other federations.
Correct.
So you're not getting punished for competing at a international competition.
No, it's the anti-doping rules account.
Yeah. Okay.
So therefore, a national federation could be a member of IPF and us.
So you're making it a lot more accessible as well.
Yes.
Right. So if someone has a big international competition in their country, they can do that, and then they can still go World Powerlifting. So it's a lot more accessible.
Yep.
It's a lot fairer. People don't need to be worried about being banned for
petty reasons or for pure political reasons.
If there's countries there are a lot of countries where there aren't a lot of competitions, so they're like, so if there's countries that there aren't a lot of competitions, they can still compete somewhere else, knowing that in the end they can still compete drug tested in World Powerlifting, yes, right?
Absolutely.
The once a year they might be able to.
Individuals can join. There is a capacity for individuals to join. So
and is that unlike other federations?
That's unlike other federations. There's a few orphans out there. Obviously we don't want to flood because it could get hard to administer. There's a few orphans out there who have no home, without using any names, who can join also.
Well, that's really good as well. That's another massive improvement. So let's give you an opportunity to shill World Powerlifting. Tell us more about it, or what you think people should know now. I think the lifters are doing a lot of good spreading it, and I think you see that on social media. Yep. But you personally, just talk about it for a little while. We've covered a lot, but
World Powerlifting is the crystallisation of the heart of powerlifting. It's an organisation which is about the lifter and the sport. It's a non-profit body. The purpose of the entity is to take the sport forward. This is an elemental, fundamental, healthy sport which should be 1,000 times bigger than it is. We've got to have a vehicle to take it forward that's not tainted by drugs and financial corruption and so on and so forth. This is it. And we've made I'd say a pretty good start. Have a look at our roster of events for 2019 spread around the world at the local, regional and international level.
That's it. That was good. I was expecting a bigger thing, but no, that's good. It's true. That's what you're seeing online. I'm definitely, you see people going, "Oh, World Powerlifting's a small federation." You're like, man, give it some time. Give it a few years. How long has the IPF been around? How long have all the biggest
Since 1971, when they had 6 nations, and I think they grew to about 8 in year 2 and
I think
look at the start of anything. So you look at Amazon. Look what they were when they first started. Now it's one of the biggest grossing companies in the world.
I think people are quite spoiled in the way that they look at the IPF, and the IPF is really big.
Sure,
there's a lot of lifters, but
big.
they've also, like you said, been around since 71. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think World Powerlifting, you say there's going to be 300 and something, probably 300 something lifters next year in full power and bench only. You take out the strict curl and everything. That's a good level to start with, but I think people are also going to be surprised at the rate of growth, right? Especially the more the more federations that join. So that's one thing I think, right? People are already going, "Oh, World Powerlifting isn't big." You're like, man, it's been 10 months? 11 months?
Less than that.
Yeah, less than that.
February, March.
And you've already had a world championship. You've already had how many international competitions?
3.
3 international competitions in the first year of starting up.
Yep.
And it's all going to get bigger. Is there a goal for the amount of international competitions you want to host in the next 2-3 years?
I couldn't give you a number, but we want to have a full spread across every continent, basically.
Yeah.
So we would imagine we're getting to 10, 15, 20 international competitions in a couple of years.
And you put into perspective, the IPF have been operating for half a century.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's to give perspective to the listeners as a long time,
I just think it's also got the backing of some big federations, and PA is the dominant federation in Australia out of all numbers wise and competition wise. How many competitions we run? Also, the level of the lifters is really high.
Between 80, 90 competitions the last couple of years each year. And coming back to what Tyler was saying, our problem is not AP or IPF. Our problem is we can't meet demand. As you well know, we had to introduce a system where there's a starting gun fired for when people can enter competitions online, at 6 p.m. on such and such date, and they fill in half an hour to an hour quite often. And I get endless calls. Oh, I missed out. I didn't get in. Who are you? I'm not a member yet, but I'll join if I can get in. Sorry, I can't. There's nothing I can do. We just haven't got capacity. There's massive untapped demand out there.
Yeah, this explains why he's trying to get Apex Strength affiliated.
And we are running competitions from next year. That's something we want to do because the competitions do sell out so fast. Is the only way we get more of those right is by clubs picking up the slack. Like PA doesn't run the comps; it's the clubs.
The clubs run it. PA basically underwrites it. We pay
Yeah.
the costs. Yeah.
You pay the costs and everything, but like the only way is if people that own clubs to run more. That's the only way we're going to solve the problem.
The affiliated club network is we finally stumbled on after being through state associations and state branches and various structures we've had. That's the thing that works. It's the McDonald's principle. It's the franchise principle. Each club is motivated to maximise its revenue, its number of members, and that comes through having the credibility of Powerlifting Australia, through having cycles of 10, 12 weeks where all your members are G'd up to participate in their own local competition.
Yeah. So just before we go on to some general questions and we finish off this Strengthcast, something I'm really curious about, not everyone got to see the World Powerlifting Championships this year. The stream was hit and miss.
Yep.
What was your opinion of the World Powerlifting Worlds and the 100% Raw Worlds, and what improvements are you going to make
as you said,
on next year?
The spirit and the culture was fantastic.
It was amazing.
The organisation was a little bit overwhelmed because he's used to a certain number of, the promoter was used to a certain number of lifters, and probably a little bit more relaxed atmosphere, whereas our side of the world was expecting or had anticipation of a full World Championships. They knew there was a few corners had to be cut, the bodyweight classes being a bit different, etc., etc. But it wasn't helped by Hurricane Michael coming through
And having a blackout,
the night it started and the power being off.
Which wasn't anyone's fault.
No.
That was like, you can't blame anyone for that. You can't
weather.
control the weather. There was a hospital, I remember everyone going, where's the power? And they're like, look, we're trying to get a hospital down the road up and running before, we get the hotel running. But it's still actually even with that day actually ran pretty good, considering there was next to no power.
But the whole thing has to be crisper. It has to be like a World Championship.
So what changes are you making?
Everybody in uniform. There has to be marshalling, keeping order in the back room and the spectator areas. There has to be a start on time mentality. If you let a powerlifting contest run late on one session, it just compounds through the whole week.
And it did through the whole week.
Schedule's so important. Yeah.
So are you, not you personally, but is World Powerlifting taking more control next year?
We're already planning Calgary. I'm dealing with a promoter already. There should be a first flyer out any day now. The venue and all the rest should be announced. It'll be spot on.
Yeah, because I feel like while World Powerlifting is a new federation, the people involved have a lot of experience, and so it won't take long to iron these things out, because the backing of it, the collective experience of all the members is very large. Yes. So this year, you kind of, like you said, World Powerlifting attached on to 100% Raw Worlds.
Correct.
Is next year, is it safe to say next year is the
it's
World
100%
Powerlifting?
Worlds from 1st of January, it's the one and only set of rules.
Yep. So it is World Powerlifting Worlds next year?
Yes. Correct.
And only that?
Yes.
So everything will be ironed out a lot more, because you guys do host like we said, the is it FIBO or FIBO? FIBO comp run really well.
We're able to translate what we'd achieved at FIBO Sydney, or Fitness Show, it's known
by
as
taking more control.
By translating that model across. Yi Chen, though, the local organiser, was terrific, I must say. But it was our guidance was there.
That's good. And what are you most excited about with World Powerlifting, aside from the drug testing, which I think we're all excited about and we all believe in?
Well, that's what I said before. This is pure lifting. It's lifting for the sake of the sport. It's to get the sport out of the mire and get it out to the public and get it out to the lifters and the fitness industry.
Great. Cool. So we'll just finish with some questions.
So I have a question for you, Rob.
I have a question.
I've had QCs are less
I have a question for you.
aggressive in their questioning.
Take the glasses off for this one. And a lot of the listeners want to know the answer to this one, but when will Anthony hold on to a third deadlift?
Never.
I've just switched to hook grip, all right? That 350 moved easy. I saw
the 335 coming out of your hand. Thank God the referees didn't see it.
I don't know if you had your glasses on, but... because I didn't feel that move at all. I held it up there for a good
I
extra
could
few
hear
seconds.
Cameron laughing in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
I saw
Far
that
away.
right up, and to say I squeezed every gram out of the 322 squat was not fair to say. And to say I struggled with that 350 deadlift, again, was unfair. But I'll just have to prove it to you next year.
No, it was good lifting.
I'm going to
It was a
call
good-
your name
good
out at the top of
performance.
my next deadlift when I get a third, because I've only ever got one third deadlift. It's my first competition.
Definitely should do that.
Yeah, no, that third deadlift in March is for you, Rob. I'll just do something. I'll do a token third deadlift, like 290 or something. Well, screw you, Tyler.
Hey, that was a user
When
question.
are you going to go 9 out of 9 is my question to you.
When are you going to crash through the 500 kilo barrier?
Hey, let's not pick on the genetics, all right?
B grade's looking pretty tough right now, isn't it?
What's your opinion on the history of powerlifting in Australia, and why did various federations splinter away from the AAPLF in the 80s and 90s?
Oh, well, drugs is the superficial answer.
And you were a part of that?
Yeah, we had this turning point where the majority set up, you probably know the history more than me, or the alphabet more than me, AAPLF, I think it was. We've had about 3 or 4 incorporations. But it was the Senate inquiry into drugs and sport, the formation of ASADA, triggered that. So we had a decision to make. Do we just go off like bodybuilding, whatever, into our own world, no testing, not be an official sport anymore with the Sports Commission? Or do we go the other way, sign up for testing and start again? And the majority, after a lot of turmoil, not dissimilar from now, wanted to go that way. And the second federation, Capo, was formed, and then they have splits within themselves. They have Son of Capo and Capo number 2, and then God decided to invent GPC, and it's basically probably ego.
Okay.
Everyone, powerlifting is an individual sport. It attracts rugged individualists, and some messiah arises, and they want their own federation.
And
No particular rationale beyond that. Of course, you can say why we started a new federation, but I hope I've explained.
well, yeah.
A reason to do so.
Yeah. And during that time, where you were heavily involved in powerlifting from the 80s, not just lifting but coaching, you lost a lot of friends during that, right? A lot of people you would have considered friends or hung out with when you wanted to split or you wanted to do drug testing. There were some dramas.
There were some dramas, yeah. I remember the police being called to one meeting, etc., etc. All this excitement's gone on for a long time. To be honest, no, I don't agree with that.
Well, you wouldn't call them friends.
Exposed themselves
Yeah.
in those days,
Okay.
and to a degree the same now.
Do you have any friends that did go in or stay in untested federations, and you're still friends with them now?
It's a really good question.
I've got to think.
It's not a good sign if you have to think.
In those days. Look,
Rob,
I'd
do
be
you
in
have friends?
civil terms.
He's
Only
like,
you. Only you and my
got him
dog.
on his toes.
Only who?
Only you and my dog. No. I don't have a dog. Anyway. To be honest, no, it was quite a parting of the ways back
Yeah.
then. More no than yes. Yeah, you can be civil.
So there was a pretty distinct line.
There was a distinct line drawn, yeah. And that side of the coin has gone that way and fractionated out even further.
Yeah, whereas
then
powerlifting, Australia, and
It
drug
has
testing
remained
kind
pretty
of
solid, yeah.
And that also shows how much you invested in it, because I mean, your whole life has changed, revolving around that basically.
I do have another life, I think, sometime, somewhere. Other things I do.
I don't think
Actually,
people realise
people
that.
don't believe it. I actually go to an office and earn a living.
Yeah, you're a.
I was originally an accountant. I was a property developer for a while of sorts with mixed results, and a clinical psychologist. I still have an office, go to work.
What do you
make
do
money.
now?
Psychologist.
What kind?
The
Yeah, no, I mean, like, what are you specialised in? What
it's clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
A lot of it's forensic.
Can you help me?
No, some cases cannot be cured.
Do you just pay out the people who come in?
Yeah, I can't imagine going to Robert, like, Robert, I'm depressed, like, I got nothing to live for. He'd be like, good, you're useless. Like,
Go squat.
just touching on this isn't a question written down. How many hours a week do you do that?
It's still probably less. It's less. It's impossible. It's less than full time now. I just time means nothing to me.
Do you ever
I would spend more time on powerlifting. For
do
sure.
you ever regret the amount of time you put into powerlifting?
No.
No,
No.
it was a good answer.
Well, that was a quick,
Yeah,
decisive answer to that one.
I think I insulted him for the first time
It's an
ever.
inherently good thing, and
And you love it.
goodness will
right?
provide.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know anyone else that'll fly to a competition, you know, the other side of the country and then fly back that night, right? But, like, I think it's safe to say you live and breathe powerlifting.
Yes.
Next question. This is one.
This question's getting scarier and scarier.
Yeah.
They're getting harder and harder to answer for some reason.
This one we phrased a little bit differently. And this guy wants to know the reason behind the rule. Why do lifters get banned for volunteering at other federation competitions?
It's not for volunteering. It's our version of the infamous 14.9.
Why?
Well, the concrete answer is way back. We were told we'd lose our Sports Commission recognition. We didn't do it.
Okay.
Because you can't have... We can't support a netherworld of untested sport. The theory is most sports have one federation recognised by the government, and that's it, and that's drug tested, drug controlled.
Yeah.
Obviously there's bodybuilding, some of the martial arts.
So this
have
goes
multiple
beyond just you.
federations.
Yeah, this is like further than that, which I
just-
think a
it's
lot
just-
of people don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's beyond
So
PA.
it started as a political reason, but still, we considered it, but still that moral reason still applies. How can we sort of say you can have a testing holiday for 6 or 12 months, you can go off to XYZ, gear yourself out of your head, come back, be stronger than ever, go off, sure, but keep half the gains. What's the point? We've sanctioned cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there has to be a clear dividing line. You're in, you're tested, you're drug free, or you're not.
Yeah, okay. So it's kind of like, again, you draw that distinct line and you're like, look, if you want to be tested, play by the rules. Play by these rules, right? Yeah. I think it's quite safe to say, and this isn't an attack or anything, but you want tested powerlifting to be in on itself, right? You don't want it to get muddy. You don't want the waters to get muddy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does this include
I
people?
mean, it's not volunteering, it's specific. It's lifting, refereeing and coaching.
Have
Yeah.
people been banned for volunteer? Oh, so it's lifting,
Refereeing and coaching.
refereeing, and
coaching.
coaching.
So
So
you can
volunteering,
matches-
not just loading.
So you can go and watch.
Oh, you can go and watch.
Yeah.
You can go to an Ed Cohn seminar despite what the IPF says, as long as Ed Cohn doesn't coach you. In actual fact, it's not wise. You can spot even. We've had to get a ruling. I've actually asked the
So you can
lawyers.
spot and load.
You could spot, but
You're not
But
gonna,
your recommendation
you're not
is
gonna,
not.
you're not going to be in the good pages,
Yeah.
basically.
Your recommendation is to not.
but specifically lifting, refereeing and coaching.
If you could give a lifter only one piece of advice, what would it be? And only one piece. And a good piece, not like you're terrible or try harder.
It's take what the sport has to offer you, contribute, but take what it has to offer you, what it can teach you in terms of discipline, hard work, being the cornerstones of and intelligence. Smart training is what produces results, and take the lessons that can give you, and give back to the sport by honouring those principles.
It's a really good piece of advice. I was expecting like chest up or something.
Keep your chest up all the way through.
No, that's a really good piece of advice, right? So it's not only give to the sport, not only take from the sport, it's give back.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this sport is held up by volunteering, right? So you get those people that,
Nobody's worked out how to make money from powerlifting itself yet.
yeah, you get money through coaching and stuff, but as like you always see those lifters that want to compete at comps, want to complain at comps about certain things, they never want to help out and help fix the issues.
Quite often, and I call such persons bluff. I say, okay, here's this job, why don't you take on this job? And 9 times out of 10, I'm a bit busy this week, this month, this year, sort of thing, or they take it on, they don't do it.
So you filter it out.
1 out of 10 sort of
Yeah.
comes forth. We get
Yeah.
some
Well,
good
that's-
volunteers out of it.
That's good advice. Give
Yeah.
back and take,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to ask, where do you see PA and the sport of powerlifting in 10 years?
Well, hopefully at least becoming a middle order sport. I mean, we could easily have 5,000, as one of your clients. We could easily get to 5,000 members because they're literally knocking on the door saying, I want to do powerlifting, but I can't fit in the contest. Our problems are structural. Our problems are financial. We've got no money in the bank. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We've got no cash reserves. We turn over quite a bit of money, but at the end of midnight each 30th of June, there's nothing there. There's various cash flow crises on the way through. But there's potential there in Australia to have 75,000 plus members, to have more recognition, to have profile in terms of more of our social media, to infiltrate the fitness industry more, to have more gyms, to do that and to replicate that worldwide, to have standing as an international sport, which will attract sponsors.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we're trying to do with the Strengthcast is, give people like yourself, like athletes, professionals, a platform to speak of, because really there's not many of this in Australia, where there is, in America there is a lot more, but I mean, not so much in natural powerlifting, but I mean, that's why we're doing it.
Lastly, I think we're about to wrap it up. This is something I've just thought of now, I'm curious, with all these untested federations offering prize money and everything, is there ever any intention to do that in PA and or World Powerlifting? Or do you think it might?
It's hard going. I mean, again, we're on the, we're going to bear basics financially. It's a volunteer-based organisation, not for profit. So it's very hard to come up with big sums of prize money. We need, commercial partners. It's chicken and the egg. You need to get to a certain size to attract commercials partner who underwrite, something like that.
But if there was the finances there, something you would be for?
We're looking around the 2020 mark to have something in terms of some sort of world series or world circuit, integrating all these fitness shows we've got, for sure. And we're thinking of, again, to take to 2020, because 2019 is already locked in, of some sort of CrossFit type model. You have regionals or whatever, stepping stones towards a bigger nationals.
Okay.
And that hopefully would have something tangible involved.
Yeah. Well, are you much less limited with World Powerlifting now about sponsors and everything as well? With World Powerlifting, like the IPF has the list and everything,
no,
World Powerlifting doesn't.
No,
so
we have a list of approved equipment for international events only, which has one on the list at the moment, which is LECO. We don't try and regulate apparel.
Yeah. So does that open up the door
Beyond
for
the
more
fundamental
sponsors
rules.
and everything?
Yes.
To bring in more money?
Yes. So we're saying that apparel companies, the door's open, come to us with a
Yeah.
proposition.
Okay. So that's something you are interested in and would take on.
Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. Would you like to add anything, Tyler?
Next, what podcasts or Strengthcasts?
Anything about today? Rob, would you like to finish with anything?
Well, we've got lots of events coming. There's still time for Powerlifting Australia members to nominate for the Oceania Championships in Brisbane.
So people can still do that?
Yep, closing date is this week. And then we move on to the whole of next year's events. Fitness Show Sydney in April, the Open, 3 nationals, Masters and Cairns, also in April, Juniors in Canberra, the Opens at the end of June, and the Worlds in Calgary in October. And there's 3 or 4 fitness shows on the way through: Melbourne, Shanghai, and I think Brisbane.
So really big competition here. That's amazing. It's only going to get bigger. It's all forward from here.
Absolutely.
All up. Well, if you don't have anything else to add, Tyler?
I'm just curious, would you be interested in doing like a Jerry Springer episode where you and Gaston are on?
Of course.
You're the bigger man. That's all
Gaston,
right.
come on out.
yeah. Come on, mate.
A massive thanks for coming down today, Rob.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Very informative. I'm sure we cleared a lot of stuff up for a lot of people. This is the longest episode we've done. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoy the drama. There's probably going to be some posts about this. It's going to be great. So thank you, Rob, for coming on and clearing that up for everyone.
Okay, so
And
thank you for taking the interest, and thank you for putting in the information out there.
No worries. That's all we wanted to do was offer a platform so everyone could know.
Yep. Share it with your friends.
Yep, this is a big one. This is our biggest episode. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you in 2 weeks. It's just going to be Tyler and I with maybe a guest that's a friend. We're going to go over our own competitive career, what our goals are, what the goals of our gym are, and we're just going to cover all those personal kind of questions that people are interested in and have been asking. Thanks for listening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.